When I first started playing Warframe, I was given the choice of choosing between 3 starting frames: Excalibur, Mag, and Volt. I ended up choosing Volt because it was advertised as being a potent alternative to gunplay, but I quickly realized that was just completely untrue. Out of his 4 abilities, only 2 directly dealt damage at range to enemies, and one of those abilities dealt so little damage while also taking away energy that you could spend on other moves that it might as well just not have existed. It was less of an alternative to gunplay and more of a support to it, and I guess I kind of just accepted that. For the next 6 years, I played the game under the paradigm that some Warframe abilities just weren't meant to be used, and that playing optimally involved structuring your entire mod setup and energy economy around using only 1 or 2 of a Warframe's abilities. But then something happened. Lavos happened. Now, this would be the part where I explained how Lavos' abilities worked and how to maximize them, but there are undoubtedly dozens of other channels that have made much more in-depth and informative videos than I ever could. The short explanation is that Lavos is an alchemist-themed caster Warframe who can alter the damage type of all his abilities. But the interesting thing about him, and what got me thinking about the entire game structure of Warframe as a whole, is the fact that Lavos doesn't use energy. Rather, his abilities go on cooldowns with varying durations, but just this small alteration, this removal of a single resource, changed everything. Warframe energy is currently bottlenecked, as you are limited from casting all of your 4 abilities in favor of just saving all your energy to repeatedly cast either your strongest or your most optimal ability. Of course, there are Warframes like Trinity and Protea, as well as other methods which can restore energy, but that energy just goes to spamming that one powerful ability over and over again, and weaker, or even in many cases, simply just more situational abilities go unused. But again, Lavos doesn't use energy, and therefore is an interesting example of playing Warframe without an energy system. First and foremost, not having energy means that when you're playing Lavos, you no longer have to ration out your energy to your most powerful abilities, and you can use each of them when it's most beneficial for you to do so. You then kind of form a rotation with Lavos' abilities, using them in an order that makes each ability from his entire kit as effective as possible. This got me thinking about energy as a concept in Warframe, and if energy was even a necessary resource or not. In most games that use it, energy, mana, magic, or whatever, is a resource that is readily and easily replenishable. You either get it back passively through rapid regeneration, or through simply using your abilities like in Final Fantasy XIV or other MMORPGs. This makes it so characters can regularly and repeatedly use all the abilities that make them unique without running out of gas. Meanwhile, in Warframe, you collect enough energy to use an ability once, cast it, and that's it. You gotta go around killing enemies until you have enough energy to use that ability again. In fact, the only other game that I can readily think of that has ability energy drop from enemies as a resource is Terraria, of all things, where enemies killed by using magic weapons and spells drop these purple stars which restore a large amount of mana, letting you keep shooting while also forcing you to dip into the fray occasionally to restock on mana. Back to Warframe though. Normally, the amount of energy you get from killing enemies with one ability alone doesn't even come close to the cost of casting it again. And even when external sources are used to keep energy topped off, the player will only use their most powerful room-clearing abilities, since they have no cooldown and the player's energy reserves will always be full. But Lavos' uniqueness extends beyond raw gameplay, because with the elimination of energy and needing to mod around its consumption, several mod slots in Lavos' upgrade screen open up. And those are mod slots you can customize freely without worrying about sacrificing ability effectiveness, letting you dip into Warframe's large collection of more unique and exotic mods. For example, I'm running the Mecha set on my Lavos and Kubro, which passively marks enemies that will then spread all of their status effects to other enemies when they die, which synergizes super well with Lavos' status effect-based playstyle. And that's just one example of a single mod set. There are 16 of those in the game, believe it or not, as well as tons of more obscure mods that don't fit as well in traditional builds. Or at least they can't be implemented without sacrificing a Warframe's effectiveness, but Lavos gets to have his cake and eat it too. Playing Lavos and customizing my frame's abilities let me feel a degree of fun that I haven't felt since I first played this game, Because of that, I genuinely think that energy could be removed from Warframe and replaced with ability cooldowns, and that would change the game for the better. This would allow for a greater range of gameplay and customization for every frame, while also allowing abilities to be tuned to be more powerful without the risk of them getting spammed and breaking the game. Take Volt Shock, for example. It deals very little damage, but that's because if it didn't, Volt would have an AoE nuking tool that could be cast over and over again for very little energy. But if it was on a cooldown instead, say 10 or even 5 seconds, it could be made powerful enough to actually take out a few enemies with one cast, while still allowing the players to use their guns with it being on cooldown. And I understand, of course, that to carry out a process like this, changing around the abilities of all other 44 Warframes in the game right now, that would be a massive undertaking, but I honestly believe that it would be worth the effort because, honestly, leveling and customizing Lavos has been the most fun I've had with this game in months, if not years. But I know I'm not an all-knowing force of Warframe knowledge, so if you do have anything to add or say in response to what I've been thinking about, I'd love to hear it, so let me know in the comments and I'll try and get back to you on it. Anyways, that's just something I've been thinking about lately. I've got more ambitious videos in the works down the line, but for now, see you later.